the reason that our speaker, Wibawanto Nugroho, was at National Defense University 10 years ago is because the Indonesian Ministry of Defense nominated him to come to the United States for a year to earn that degree. He was already quite experienced when he arrived, and now he's had 10 more years of experience and has added an amazing number of other degrees. You may have more master's degrees than anyone I know. He served in the Indonesian government in several capacities. He is just weeks shy of defending his PhD dissertation at the University of Exeter in England on the subject of understanding Islamist radical terrorism. And as you may have seen in the introduction, as part of the research he did for that dissertation, he interviewed more than some 40 terrorists, as well as relevant policymakers. Sometimes it's probably hard to tell the difference, but I won't go into that. Wibawanto has worked with the Indonesian Army, the Ministry of Defense, the chairman of the Defense, Foreign Affairs, Intelligence and Information Committee of the Indonesian Parliament, and a number of other entities. I'm not going to name all the institutions from which he has gained degrees. I will, however, tell you that his thesis at National Defense University earned an honors award from the university. And its topic is not entirely related to the one he's giving tonight on understanding Islamist terrorism. It was Indonesian Armed Forces' role, strategies and capabilities in countering terrorism within a changing national security, looking ahead 2007 to
2017.
Today, 2017. So please join me in welcoming Wibawanto Nugroho.
Thank you for everything, by the grace of God. Thank you for Professor Bob Relly, Professor Thomas Blau, for giving me A. Both of them giving me A, and also for everybody here, my wife, and also my very close Indonesian folks, Robert, and then Pastor Tony, Deacon Harry, Deacon Daulat, and the wife, and also Larry Bailey, my friend. And thank you also Jeff Moore, PhD. Jeff received his PhD from the Institute of Arab and Islamic Studies, University of Exeter. The same university, the same institute, like mine. So today, I came from Indonesia last Monday, and then we went straight for attending the very tightly scheduled NDU Global Security Symposiums for the alumni, Quote and Real, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And this morning, it was my turn to give some talk about this topic. So, and then I've been awake the whole day, even though I'm in the jet lag. I'm excited. I can't wait to meet you here tonight. This time. So basically, the presentations for tonight is I would like to focus on talking about the patterns of Islamist terrorism in the case of Republic of Indonesia. Let's make it that focus. And I'm in the position not as a policymaker, not as a politician, but here as a scholar. So neutral, objective, must be scientific. According to Dr. Blau, always teach us that way when we were at NDU. The thesis of my dissertation is what is the underlying factors? What is the underlying factors that continue to inspiring jihadist terrorism still exist in the case of Republic of Indonesia? So my definition of what is Islamist terrorism. So terrorism is tactic. There are like 109 definitions of terrorism in the policy and the scholar world, and there are 22 significant elements in the terrorism. But the bottom line is terrorism is the violent tactic being used to send a message to the audience by attacking at the minimum civilians as the victims. So in order to achieve certain political goals or other strategic goals, including maybe religious goals, my point is terrorism can be performed by any actors. So terrorism can be done by the state actor, or terror from the above when government suppress their citizens, or state-sponsored terrorism perpetrated by the states to other states, or non-state terrorisms. For the Islamist terrorisms in Indonesia, I define it as a non-state terrorisms performed by citizens, which is civilian. For the certain Islamist purpose, I differentiate Islamic and Islamism. Islamic is a faith, is a religion. I'm not going to talk about Islamic. I'm talking about the Islamism, which is a set of often conflicting political ideology that is based on the Islamic faith. According to anyone's interpretations, it can be different, right? Than some of the Islamist political ideology, they are still peaceful, progressive, gradual, and some of them violent, doesn't want to take a gradual ways, want to make an extreme change by extreme interpretations of the selective Islamic texts from the scripts. That's my definitions. So the specific definition Islamist terrorism in Indonesia is the Salafis, because they want to establish the Islamic Sharia law and to establish the Salafi Islamic states. Indonesia has been struggling with this kind of stream of political Islam since 1945, since our independence. It's been 7 decades already. Even though Indonesia is the world's most populous country, we are not the Islamic state. We are the theistic-based nations. We trust in God. We trust that the universe is created by unlimited God, but we are not based in any single religions. So it's what we call as Pancasila. I was invited to give some talk at the Indonesian National Resiliency Agency to speak for the capstone course for the military and the police senior general officers last August about national ideology, the importance of national ideology, and to treat national ideology as a center of gravity, including in dealing with the violent radicalisms. So I tried to develop the model that is based on what I was studying at NDU with Dr. Blau and Professor Relly. There is no such thing that is, someone becoming terrorist in one night, right? So everything must go through the gradual process. So there are several variables that is tested in my thesis. The first one is the grievances, consists of economic, social, and political grievances. And then the intervening variable is the social network. And then the fifth variable is the radical ideology. And the sixth variable is the state reparations, or a carrot. And then the last one is a government incentive, the way government gives the special attention. Right. The seventh variable I tested with the qualitative and quantitative methods. Not only with qualitative, but I used the multivariate statistical analysis in order to measure scientifically, in quote, how big the correlations and the causal effect of independent variables to dependent variables, for only dependent variables. So basically, the method that I use is by referring to 77 respondents. Out of 77, I referred 40 to, I say the radicals. Yeah, I interview them, and then I test the result with the quantitative methods. And other than the 40, I interviewed the 50 others, policymakers, including foreign diplomats being stationed in Indonesia, and Indonesian intelligence officer, high-level rankings, military, police. I interviewed them, and then the other 22 I studied from their background. the informations about this, the other 22. So based on the 77 respondents, I can say that there are 4 lines of political Islam in Indonesia. Okay, the last streams, the most dangerous one is the Salafis Jihadism, violent Salafi Jihadisms. They want to establish Islamic Sharia law. They want to establish Salafi Islamic State. They don't want to take a gradual way. They want to take an extreme way. They want to take a violent way. They don't want to embrace democracy. They are against national ideology. They are against everything. Right? So that's minority, but still disturbing. Right? Actually, their ideology is inspired by Salafism, Jihadism, and then to some level, Takfirism. We always talk about Takfirism 10 years ago, right? So three of them. So this is the transnational Islamist movement that influencing Indonesia. Transnational. Okay, the 4th. The 3rd layer is maybe it's related to Hizbut Tahrir. Hizbut Tahrir. So basically, they don't want to take the violent methods in order to achieve their goals. They usually use the hatred speech, but they also neither want to be involved in the democracy. So they're not doing anything basically. They just aspire to establish the Khilafah, but they're not taking the violent way. They're not involved in democracy and pluralism. So Hizbut Tahrir, as we know, is also transnational Islamist movement, right? And then the second line of political Islam in Indonesia is based on the Ikhwanism, or I can say based on the Muslim Brotherhood, inspired by the Muslim Brotherhood, which is they used to take if we study about the Muslim Brotherhood, they used to take a violent stance in order to achieve their goals, but they repent and then they want to take a democracy as the way to achieve their goals. And then I cannot mention the name of the party in Indonesia that is inspired by Ikhwanism or Muslim Brotherhood, but maybe we can do some search just by yourself. But the party is still, is quite strong. But at least they're not taking the violent stance. They want to embrace the democracy, and sometimes at the local elections, they want to work together with the Christian party, like election in local level, like in Papua. Because for the pragmatical purpose. The question is still a national. I think many Indonesians that concerned with this issue, they're still suspicious with their intentions. I think even though they want to take a gradual, peaceful, democratic way to achieve their goals, within their heart, maybe once they are in the power, they will Islamize the nations, right? But there's always intention. But at least they aspire it in the peaceful and democratic way. Is something that is fair enough. And then the first layer of Indonesian Islamist politics is Nusantara, is what we call Indonesian versions of Islam. So basically, they are the Pancasila based. They are majority. They're not aiming to establish Islamic Sharia law. They're not aiming to establish the Salafis Islamic states. They stick to Pancasila. This is majority in Indonesia. So this is our bulwark, the layer to deal with the second and third, fourth, at least the first and second. So this is I'm focusing on the fourth line, the fourth stream of Indonesian's political Islam. They keep transforming, even though the old guys died or get captured, but the new ones keep coming up. So because of the resource mobilization is still there, as long as the ideology is still there, the charismatic leader is still there, political opportunity is still there, or strategic calculus intentions to establish Sharia law, Islamic, Salafi Islamic State is still there, and the terrorist patron overseas, right? Funding and everything. So they will be existing all the time. So my point is to saying that even though for the last, say, 15 years, according to open sources informations that also confirmed by National Police Chief General Tito Karnavian, there has been 5,000 Indonesians being captured for the radicalism related issues since 2002 until 2017. 5,000. But there's only 1,000 being brought to the court, because for the other 4,000, maybe the government doesn't have enough proof to convict them, right? So this is the background. But we have to remember that Indonesia is a theistic based but secular, pluralist. So the evolutions keep going on, even though Jemaah Islamiyah was dismantled in 2000, dismantled 2002, 2003, but the non-structural GI still exists because some Umar Patek, Dul Matin, Nurdin M. Top, all these guys. But now what is concerning is the ISIS-related cells. This has become my concern actually. If we see from the, we can extract the open source informations, how Indonesia is still somehow within the global map of the ISIS risks of influence. Since 2014, there is no less than 700 at least Indonesian foreign fighters, went to Syria and Iraq for fighting with ISIS. And the Indonesian government has been trying their best from President Yudhoyono, now President Jokowi, to deal with this issue, and then including by securing back Indonesians that are already in Syria in the battlefield. This is the challenge. We cannot deny. This is the challenge. We cannot deny. So how the grievances, radical ideology, social network, and everything is not only exists in the domestic level, but connecting at the global level. And then, based on my research, tested statistically using various models in multivariate techniques, basically economic grievances, social grievances, and political grievances, at least statistically, are not proven as the significant factors. What is proven as significant factors is social network and radical ideology with the significant level of 90, 95, 99%, depending upon which models we are used. Which independent variables we enter, right? So my thesis is economic, social, and political grievances is only the necessary factors, right? When President Suharto was in the power, the economic inequality was also high, but it doesn't make terrorists being created in Indonesia, right? Because the issue is in the social network and radical ideology. So how the social network influenced Indonesians, and then how they are exposed to radical ideology, Salafi ideology. So based on my research, my interview with these 40 folks, they don't want to be associated with the first and the second line of Islamist political Islam in Indonesia. Nahdlatul Ulama, Muhammadiyah, Para Madinah, Liberal Islam, and also the second line, the political party that inspired by Ikhwanism, Muslim Brotherhood. They don't want to be associated with these two. So they have their own versions, and they are exposed through at the familiar level, from schools. They have a training experience together, or they have experience in the battlefield, in and in Mindanao, they were involved, they know each other quite long. But my point is very concerning because not only that the case, but based on the research, the ideology is coming through the, what's called it, dakwah, dakwah engagement in the campus, in the college, university, schools. And the first Nahdlatul Ulama Muhammadiyah and also para Madinah, the first line and second line of the political Islam in Indonesia, they also do the same thing. They also engage through to outreach the people, Indonesians through dakwah, outreach through campus and everything. But the ideology of Salafism, Jihadism, Takfirism, they are doing the same thing. It's like they're racing. Even they come to the office, you know, for the speech on Friday to spread the ideology. That's the issue. Okay, once they are embraced with that ideology, my funding is they view anything related to the Western is something kafir, togut, so it's not worthy and then has to be dismantled, including Pancasila that in their mind is a Western influenced ideology. So we have to fight for that. That's basically the. And after that, the most significant variables, with the 99% of the significant levels, this is very interesting, is their aspirations to be involved in the global jihad. So for anything, if there is a global struggle, a global jihad struggle, that's the most significant factor. So they are inspired with that. Once they are inspired with that, they will be more determined to become the violent Salafi jihadists. Maybe previously they are in the position of non-violent Salafis. But after they are inspired by the global jihad, quickly, right away, become the violent. This is my finding statistically, right? So that's the pattern. That's the pattern. So and then the sixth and the seventh variable, which is the state reparations and then government incentives. My finding said that even though they are repressed by the government, it doesn't make them becoming violent jihadists. It doesn't make them becoming terrorists. Put it that way. Put it that word. Like maybe in President Suharto era, he was quite tough, dealing with people. There is no critical, there is no free expressions in the past. But it doesn't make Indonesians want to become terrorists, right? But my finding said when the people already exposed to the Salafi ideology, they are inspired with that. When we become stronger to suppress them, the more determined they will be. That's my finding. And then this is concerning. And if we see, the social network, how they connected to each other, they are engaged in not only in the physical realm, but also they're engaged in the cyber. Right? So they use the cyber for the intelligence gathering and for the influence operations. They spread the news, they radicalize the mind through exploiting the political conditions, exploiting the weakness of the government, and they're engaging in the multi-lines of engagement at the cyber level. So they're also engaged in some level of crime, but it's not really significant. But they're equipped with a couple of folks who are excel in computers, using some computer scientists to hack some credit card. But it's not that significant. But the most significant is for the intelligence gathering and the influence operations. That's what they say, including for recruiting people going to Syria. So I also, for the qualitative side, I also tried to find the keywords in the mind of the jihadists, of these 40 jihadists. The first one is Islamic law, The second one is Salafis Islamist State of Indonesia. The third one is Khilafah Islamiyah. The third one. That's why violent jihad, dakwah, takfir, togut, the enemy of Islam, and they're always against national ideology and then national constitutions, but they see the other world as their enemy, basically. This is the case. And then, this is the pattern that, and then how about the de-radicalization itself? So I interviewed this 40, and then in order to know the effect of de-radicalization effort, I'm not going to make a conclusion only qualitatively, but I want to test statistically in order to see the proportion either significantly different or not. So basically my finding is most of them, I can say the 95%, 99%, they said that they abandoned the violent ways. Okay, but they still aspire for Islamic law and then Salafi Islamist states. They're not embracing democracy and pluralism, and then they're still against the four pillars of the state: Pancasila, national constitution, pluralisms, unity in diversity. But my point is, so this is very concerning. Why? Because they're basically just hibernate. Once the opportunity is open, they're very sensitive to be exploited, to re-engage in the violent ways. So, and then 40% of them saying that, okay, the government is not that bad. We are treated well in the prisons, and then they give us the government gives us special attention. That's it. Yeah, okay. After, so, but this is ideology. It's not easy to change someone's ideology, right? So, this is the case. And then maybe the creative way is to pushing them a little bit to the second line of the political Islam, which is by being involved in the democracy by joining the Islamist parties. But it's unlikely, based on my finding, based on my respondents, it's unlikely. So that's why our challenge is to how to balance the extremisms with the moderations. Moderations here, there are two levels of moderations in my research, in the ideological level and also in the behavioral level. So at least in the ideology, that we expect that they abandon the violent ideology and then they want to accept the national ideology. But in at the behavioral level, at least we hope them to start embracing the whatever rules of the game in Indonesia. Because if they want to change the country, they want to change the system, not engage in the system collapse strategy, but just go to the democracy and then living in the pluralisms and then becoming the good citizens to build the nations, right? So that's why we engage in the several layer of engagement, not only in the radicalization itself or disengage these individuals from the network, but also preventive and also the enforcement of the Indonesian strategic culture, which is Pancasila. That's why when I was invited to talk at the capstone course of our National War College systems in front of the general officer from Indonesian military and police, I made it very clear our center of gravity is Pancasila. If we want to rise as the winning nation, we have to stick to Pancasila. If we abandon Pancasila, just waiting for some next couple of years, Indonesia will explode. Basically, this is what I said. Let's just make it clear. So, and then, so what is the policy implication of that? Again, I'm not politicians in this position. I'm not the partisans. I'm a scholar in this position. So, Indonesia is still a potential, if we're not be careful, to produce violent Salafi jihadis and to becoming the global field of religious terrorism. Why I said religious-based terrorism? It's not religious means that the terrorism that is based on religious-based arguments according their own interpretations. Put it that words, right? So, so because we have to be clear about the definition because definition matters. So my thesis is we need to update it. The strategy is never end point. The strategy is always the beginning, the starting point. That's why we have to be more creative, innovative, and updating our national security strategy and being integrated with Indonesian grand strategy. So, and we have a counter-terrorism law issued in 2003. We're still using it until today, to 2003. They're treating violent Islamist extremists as the criminal because they're performed by the citizens. That's why the police, national police, is placed as the frontliner, backed up by national intelligence and national military. That's the issue I'm going to raise, Dr. Blau. So what is the key policy focus for the future? This is my recommendations, actually. Now, Indonesia, this current year, for the last 2 years, they're quite busy to, there's a plan to pass the new counterterrorism bill to supersede the old one, the 2003. But there is a tension between the Indonesian military and then police about how to treat the terrorism. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But my point is, we can differentiate to two. The first one is how to address the political, economic, and social grievances. That's the general development policy, I think, right? So how to narrowing the gap between the rich and poor, Gini coefficient, blah blah blah, right? So to make a more economic equitability being realized. I also said even in front of my senior Indonesians from any political camps, political disagreement is common anywhere, including in democracy. But we have to be aware. There are 5 levels of gradations, 5 levels of managing political disagreement. The first one is a totally peace, which is in the heaven, not now. Okay, at least the second line. The second line is we have a disagreement, but we got to manage it in the peaceful ways, right? In democratic way. The political oppositions, they can engage by having oppositions from engage from the newspaper or criticize the government, blah blah blah, and then the government can engage back by give their argument, support by think tanks, the healthy life of a democratic life. But the third layer is the political pressure. Is when the government start suppress their political oppositions, their opposition parties, like criminalize whatever anyone that criticizes toward the government. This is dangerous because why? Because it will invite the response by the non-state actors. They will respond. I'm going to talk a little bit about the case of Jakarta governor, Pak Ahok. Also, we know each other. My point, we have to be careful with that because government is in the central position to decide the future trajectory of Islamist movement in Indonesia. This is my thesis. It depends on the political leadership, right? If the government keep suppressing their political their opposition, it will degrade to political violence. The people will fight through a non-democratic way, outside the systems, engage in terrorism, and then government will do counter-terrorism. And then the non-state actor will engage in insurgency, and the government will engage back in counter-insurgency. And after that, the last stage, which is civil war. So everything back to the government is up to them. This is the challenge of democracy, that we have to be wise in that seeing this. So I get so many questions about what is my opinion about the event I think most of you heard about Jakarta governor, the case of Jakarta governor, the Christians, Chinese ethnics, the first time. There were like many, like 10 million Indonesians who went to the streets doing demonstrations in November 2016, 2017, early 2017, demand President Jokowi for Ahok to be convicted for the blasphemy, for the blasphemy. And Ahok said, I'm treated unfairly. That's why I react that way. It's according to him. My argument is why you are treated unfairly. If Indonesia is not having Pancasila or unity in diversity or a pluralistic country, you're not going to become the governor in Jakarta. You can become governor in Jakarta because Indonesia is Pancasila nations. It's a pluralistic nations. We trust in the unity and diversity. But if you got the problem with the Muslim people, you have to do some self-introspection. What's wrong with you? So Ahok, even though he's not angel, but he's not a Satan. I mean, he's just a human with his strength and weakness. So basically, he was emotionally triggered to respond to the fourth and the third line of the political Islam in Indonesia. They were he's very emotional, like Christian, Chinese, you cannot lead Indonesia, you cannot lead Jakarta, and then he's emotional. And senior people already reminding him, be careful, you are being dragged to their battlefield. Why you have to respond to them? You are supported by the first line of political Islam. Second line, and then he's emotional, and he slip off the tongue. He said something can be exploited by his political opposition. So that's the case. And then for the blasphemy law, there have been so many victims of it, and most of them are Muslim in Indonesia. I mean, saying something wrong about other religions, and then they're convicted with the blasphemy law. So my point is, and then they're put in the jail like more than 2 years, 3, 4, 5 years. Ahok was there in only 2 years. Ahok only 2 years. So it's fine with him. It's fair. So in the mind of Islamist movement by the time is the government was trying to protect him. That's the issue. That's why the political pressure happened when the government tried to manipulate the law and political means in order to preserve their political goals. Basically, that's the definitions. And then the non-state actors react by, okay, we go to the street, we boycott, we do demonstrations until stalemate, the state of stalemate. That's why both sides have to be self-introspective. And we got to be careful with that. And then for the second part of the policy focus is we have to be specific in dealing with the social network. They are engaged in cyber and also in the physical realm. So we have to infiltrate the networks and to do the counter operations. Right. And then the social network is not only in a domestic case, it's globally connected. It's globally connected. And the second one is the ideology. Ideology of jihadism, salafism, takfirism. Okay, let's say there's some country like giving funding to Indonesia to establish the schools, Salafist schools. Maybe the school is non-violent, Dr. Blau, like you said, non-violent, but this is just one click away from becoming violent. But I think Indonesian government must be there enough. And then whoever want to lead Indonesia, trust me, they have to know how to deal with Islam. Indonesia is the country, the nations with the very deep social cleavages, right? I can see from the three angles based on ideology. There are a group of people want to keep Pancasila as the state ideology, and then they are in other side of the populations want to have Islamic law as the national ideology, Islamist national ideology. The second one is based on economy. There are certain people want to use the socialist-based economy to build the nations, and the other is the capitalism, elitism space. And the third one is based on the system of government, federalism or unitary states. Based on the research from the Hebrew University, they're based on the 62 countries, democracy collapse or not collapse. 32 countries with the surviving democracy and 30 countries with the collapsing democracy. The findings saying that the country, the nation, and the state with the deep social cleavages are very sensitive for their democracy to collapse if they have the unitary state system and presidential system. This is what Indonesia is having. I'm not saying that we have to switch to become a federal system. No, I'm defending the unitary state of Indonesia. But my point is we have to be careful. We have to know how to lead. That's why I said to my advice to Pak Ahok is you are not political leader. You have to be careful with your mouth. You have to be careful with your behavior. You are not just a consultant or doer like a field manager. No, you are a political leader. It's different. The way you lead the nation, you have to lead the society. It's different. You cannot do. You have to be sensitive. You have to be sensitive. And economic, inequality, blah blah blah. So this is the challenge. But we can do that. We can do that. So, and then the last one is we have to be there. I think with any countries that's sponsoring the ideology of Islam that is against Indonesian values. If I'm in the position in the very strategic position in Indonesia, I will stop from the original source. I will deal with them directly. Stop. Right. So, but if funding coming and then they establish school systems, see? Just waiting for the time, just waiting in 1 to 2 years, 3 years, and then we've been going through certain levels of certain states of a policy. In 2002, we denied that we have a terrorism. We have a terrorist. In 2006, we began to acknowledge that okay, we have some radicals, and after that, since 2010, 2017, Indonesian government start to becoming more suppressive and preventive. This is the good things. Government has to change, and then my point is, and then the whole of government approach has been implemented since 2010 until 2017. 2010 was Indonesian government established National Counter-Terrorism Agency like a NCTC. NCTC has been here for the last 10 years, right? So Indonesian NCTC has 10 years, but Indonesian NCTC has the operational arm. Basically, they are engaged in detection, prevention, direct action, and international engagement. We keep working on it, and then this is a really multi-lines of efforts. And then for the one test case is democracy. This is the last part of my presentations. The basic argument of the Islamist, Salafis Islamists, especially violent Salafis Islamists, is democracy is too good, man-made, not from Allah, must be replaced. Right? So the responsibility of the government is to make sure that Indonesian democracy is in the good. The Indonesian democracy index, at least in the good shape. There are 4 indicators. The first one is free and fair elections. The second one is the security of the voters. The third one is the absence of foreign intervention. The fourth one is either the elected public officials can deliver their promise or not. So in 2014, there was elections. 51, 49%. President Jokowi won the elections, right? And the result was contested in the constitutional court. And then the court said President Jokowi still won the election. And then Pak Prabowo accept the result. Okay, that's fine. Okay. But my point is, in 2014, 2016, the 2 years was used by President Jokowi to consolidate his power. Because by the time President Jokowi, Governor Jokowi as a governor of Jakarta decided to run for the presidency of Indonesia, he always said in the public, even 5 days before he decided to run, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not thinking about that. I'm not ready. See, like a mayor of Washington, said, I'm not ready. So my point is, that's fine. He decided to run and he won. That's fine. But the consequences is he's not ready by the time. So he needs the first 2 years to consolidate his power. And then in 2016, Pak Ahok, the governor of Jakarta, made a slip of the tongue. And then the people, the majority of Muslim people go to the street and then do demonstrations, right? And the government was distracted again. And then now this is already 2017. 2018, the presidential candidate have to register already to the elections committee who want to run for the presidency. So 2019 is the election. So you can imagine, for next 2 years, everybody now is getting busy again with politics. In Indonesia, who will becoming president in Indonesia in 2019? So and then my concern is, I got a question this morning when I made a presentation at National Defense University. So what is the chance of radicalization in Indonesia? I think in one side it's good. I mean, we have to be firm with the violent or non-violent ideology, Islamist ideology that's against the Indonesians' values and rule of law. But at the same time, government must be sensitive because they think that sometimes, according to my research here, governments tend to criminalize anyone that is critical toward them. So this is the counterproductive to what they're doing. Because what is important is to make sure that rule of law is they carry rule of law. They're consistent with implementing rule of law. But on the other side of the story is, some people said, the government started criminalizing their political oppositions. After their political oppositions get some backdoor dealing, ready to support for 2019, they're no longer being criminalized. It's what they're thinking. I'm in the scholar position. I have to be neutral. I don't want to be involved in the fighting between the 2 camps or 3 camps. I want to be light of the world, so to tell the truth, right? So this is what happened. It's a counterproductive. So this is a challenge of the nation. So, but we have to make sure that my message is in 2019. I kindly back the national world to make sure that Indonesia's election in 2019 is free and neutral. There is no foreign hands being involved in supporting any candidates, because otherwise, trust me, it will implode. The grievances in the Islamic heart, Islamists, not only third, maybe in the second line. In the second line, already is very heating up now. So we have to be careful. In 2019 is very critical. We need the American support and also global audience support to make sure that the elections will be carried on in fair and free. And then, so for the counterterrorism policy, we look forward. We try to be more creative, and like what Dr. Bloh has asked me, and also the question that was asked to me this morning at NDU. What is the most important factors in the effective counterterrorism policy in Indonesia in the near future? This is my argument. Based on the national constitution in 1945, the main national security actors is national military and national police. We don't have a state police, we have a national police. It's like FBI, national police, doing everything. National police, we don't have state police. And national military, we don't have a national guard. We have a national military, right? So these two, and then they used to be in the same organization, one umbrella, Indonesian Armed Forces. When President Suharto was stepping down in 1998, they were separated. since their separations, the competition is still going on until today, especially in dealing with the domestic security. This terrorism is one of the examples. And that's why my thesis, Dr. Blau, if Indonesian national military and Indonesian national police they're getting along, in this particular case, it will be good, it will be fine. And political leadership must be not being egoistic. They have to be, they think long term for dealing with Islamist radicalism. They have to stop lying if they're lying, because they have to give the example to their citizens, because the center of the government is the good life of citizens, right? So, and then that's why the current national security bill is focusing on how national police can have more better and solid in synergy with the Indonesian national military. Hopefully the bill will be passed sometimes this year or next year maybe, and I hope my thesis, 80,000 words of thesis, can inform the Indonesian policymakers and the new counterterrorism bill that will be passed hopefully next year before the election 2019. Thank you so much. If we have any questions and answer, I will be happy to discuss with. Thank you.